She trusted her uncle for a ride. What happened in that car changed Eva's life forever. Eva never imagined that a simple car ride with the man she trusted most would become the moment her childhood ended. She was 12 years old when she climbed into Uncle Johnson's car that warm Saturday afternoon in June. She thought she was safe. She thought she knew him. She thought wrong. What happened during those 45 minutes on a quiet road outside of town would shatter her innocence, silence her voice, and leave scars that would take years to heal. This is the true story of how one girl found the courage to speak when everything inside her screamed to stay silent. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe. Stories like this are shared to raise awareness and protect lives. Before we get deeper into Eva's story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Eva Turner was what everyone in her small Ohio town called a good kid. At 12 years old, she was the kind of girl who did her homework without being asked, helped her mom with the dishes after dinner, and still believed that good things happened to good people. She had long brown hair that she always wore in a ponytail, braces that she hated but wore without complaining, and a smile that could light up a room when she felt comfortable enough to show it. Her teachers described her as quiet but thoughtful. She wasn't the type to raise her hand first in class, but when she did speak, her answers were always carefully considered. She loved reading, especially fantasy novels where the heroes always won and the bad guys always got what they deserved. On weekends, she'd curl up in the window seat of her bedroom with a book and lose herself in worlds where everything made sense. Eva lived with her mother, her father, and her younger brother, Tommy, in a modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street. Her father worked long hours as a mechanic at the local auto shop, often coming home tired and covered in grease, but always with a smile for his kids. Her mother worked part-time as a receptionist at the dentist's office downtown. They weren't wealthy, but they were happy. They were the kind of family that ate dinner together most nights, watched movies on Friday evenings, and went to church on Sundays. Eva's world was small, but it felt safe. She knew everyone in her neighborhood. She knew which houses gave out the best Halloween candy, which yards had the friendliest dogs, and which streets were safe to ride her bike on. She trusted the adults in her life. Why wouldn't she? They had never given her a reason not to. Uncle Johnson, her father's older brother, had always been a part of Eva's life. He wasn't really her uncle by blood, he was technically her father's cousin, but everyone called him Uncle Johnson because he was part of the family. He lived about 20 minutes away and the next town over, and he'd stop by every few weeks to visit. He'd bring Tommy baseball cards and he'd slip Eva a $5 bill when no one was looking, telling her to buy herself something nice. He was the cool uncle, the fun one, the one who remembered birthdays and showed up to school plays. Eva's father trusted him completely. Her mother did too, and so did Eva. Looking back now, she realizes that trust was exactly what he was counting on. Mark Johnson was 47 years old. He worked as a supervisor at a local manufacturing plant, a job he'd held for nearly 20 years. To everyone who knew him, he seemed like a stand-up guy. He was the type of man who'd help you move furniture or lend you his truck without asking questions. He showed up to family gatherings with a case of beer and stories that made everyone laugh. He coached Little League baseball for a few years, was active in his church, and always seemed to know the right thing to say to make people feel comfortable. He had been married once, years ago, but it didn't work out. He never had kids of his own, which is what he always told people when they asked why he never remarried. He said he just never found the right person. The truth that no one saw, was much darker. Johnson had mastered the art of appearing normal. He knew how to blend in, how to be the person everyone trusted. He knew that trust was a weapon, and he wielded it expertly. He had spent years building relationships with his family, positioning himself as the reliable one, the helpful one, the one you could count on. He knew that if he ever needed an alibi, if anyone ever questioned him, a dozen people would vouch for his character without hesitation. That's how predators operate. They don't look like monsters. They look like the person next door. They look like family. Looking back, there were signs no one wanted to see. There was the way he'd sometimes let his hand linger too long on Eva's shoulder. The way he'd insist on hugging her goodbye even when she seemed uncomfortable. The way he'd make comments about how she was growing up so fast, how she was becoming such a beautiful young lady. Comments that in isolation seemed harmless, but together they painted a picture that no one wanted to acknowledge. Eva's mother had felt something wasn't quite right a few times, a nagging feeling in her gut that she couldn't quite name, but she pushed it away. He was family. He was her father's cousin. She told herself she was being paranoid, that she was reading too much into innocent gestures. That's what we do, isn't it? We tell ourselves we're overreacting. We silence our instincts because the alternative, believing that someone we trust could hurt our child, is too terrifying to consider. Johnson knew this. He counted on it. He had spent years grooming not just Eva, but her entire family. He made himself indispensable, made himself trusted, made himself above suspicion. And when the time came, when he saw his opportunity, he took it. It was a Saturday in June when Uncle Johnson called the Turner household. Eva's mother answered. He said he was heading into town to run some errands and asked if Eva wanted to come along. He said he'd take her to get ice cream afterward, maybe stop by the bookstore. Eva's mother hesitated for just a moment, that instinct whispering again, but she pushed it away. It was daytime. It was just a trip to town. He was family. She said yes. Eva wasn't particularly excited about going. She had been planning to spend the afternoon reading in her room, but her mother encouraged her, said it would be good for her to get out of the house for a bit, to spend some time with Uncle Johnson. Eva didn't want to disappoint her mother, so she put her book down, slipped on her shoes, and waited by the front door. Johnson arrived 15 minutes later, pulling up in his dark blue pickup truck. He honked the horn twice and waved. Eva's mother walked her to the door, reminded her to be polite, told her to have fun. Eva climbed into the passenger seat. The leather was hot from the sun and stuck to the back of her bare legs. Johnson smiled at her as he pulled away from the curb. He asked her about school, about her friends, about the book she was reading. Normal questions, normal conversation. Eva relaxed a little. Everything seemed fine. For the first 10 minutes of the drive, everything was fine. They listened to the radio. He told her a story about something funny that happened at work. They stopped at a red light and he bought her a soda from a gas station. Eva sipped it slowly, watching the familiar streets of her town pass by through the window. Then he turned onto a road she didn't recognize. Eva asked where they were going. Johnson said he needed to make a quick stop first, pick something up from a friend who lived out this way. He said it would only take a minute. Eva didn't think much of it. She trusted him. Why wouldn't she? Eva felt a small flutter of anxiety in her chest, but she told herself she was being silly. They drove for another 5 minutes before Johnson pulled off onto a dirt path that barely qualified as a road. He put the truck in park. The engine idled. Eva asked again where they were. Johnson didn't answer. Instead, he reached over and locked the doors. That's when Eva knew something was wrong. The next 45 minutes are something Eva would spend years trying to forget, and even more years learning to talk about. What happened in that truck, on that quiet road where no one could hear her, or no one would find her, is not something we'll describe in detail here. This isn't that kind of story. What matters is this. Eva was 12 years old. She was a child, and the man she trusted, the man her family trusted, violated that trust in the most horrific way possible. He used his size, his strength, and her fear to silence her. He told her that if she told anyone, no one would believe her. He told her that it was her fault for being so grown up, for being so pretty. He told her that he'd hurt her little brother if she said anything. And then, when it was over, he drove her home as if nothing had happened. He bought her the ice cream he'd promised. He dropped her off at her front door with a smile and a wave. And Eva walked inside, her legs shaking, her mind screaming, but her voice completely silent. Eva went straight to her room. She closed the door, locked it, and sat on the edge of her bed staring at the wall. She felt numb, disconnected from her own body, like she was watching herself from somewhere far away. This is what trauma does. It fractures you. It splits your mind from your body as a way to survive something too terrible to process in the moment. Her mother called up the stairs, asked if she had fun, asked if she wanted to come down for dinner. Eva said she wasn't hungry. She said she didn't feel well. She said she just wanted to lie down. Her mother didn't push. She just told Eva to rest and left her alone. Eva lay in bed that night, still wearing the same clothes from earlier, unable to move, unable to think. The smell of his cologne was still on her shirt. The taste of the ice cream he bought her was still in her mouth. She felt dirty. She felt broken. She felt like something inside her had been permanently damaged in a way she couldn't explain. Most people who haven't experienced trauma assume that victims report it immediately, that they run home, tell their parents, call the police. That's not how it works. Experts say silence is often a survival response, not consent. When something traumatic happens, especially to a child, the brain goes into protective mode. It shuts down. It hides the memories. It convinces you that maybe it didn't happen, or maybe it wasn't as bad as you think, or maybe you deserved it somehow. Eva didn't tell anyone what happened. Not that night, not the next day, not for weeks. She told herself 100 different lies to make it bearable. She told herself it was her fault for getting in the car. She told herself she must have done something to make him think it was okay. She told herself that if she just never thought about it again, it would be like it never happened. But trauma doesn't work that way. You can't will it away. You can't bury it deep enough that it stops affecting you. Over the next few weeks, Eva's parents noticed changes. She stopped eating as much. She stopped reading. She spent more time in her room with the door locked. She flinched when her father tried to hug her. She had nightmares that left her screaming in the middle of the night. When they asked her what was wrong, she said nothing. She said she was fine. She said she just wanted to lie down. Her mother didn't push. She just told Eva to rest and left her alone. Victims often don't speak immediately, and there are so many reasons why. They're afraid they won't be believed. They're afraid they'll be blamed. They're afraid of what reporting will do to their family. They're afraid of the person who hurt them. They're afraid of the process itself, the questions, the examinations, the judgments, and most of all, they're afraid that speaking it out loud will make it real in a way they can't take back. So they stay silent, and the silence becomes a prison all its own. Eva wanted to tell someone. Every day she woke up and thought maybe today would be the day she found the courage to say the words out loud. But every day, the fear was stronger than the courage. So she carried it alone, a 12-year-old girl carrying a secret that was slowly destroying her from the inside out. If you're finding this story important, please share it. Someone watching may need to hear this today. Take a moment right now. How would you feel if this happened to someone you loved? What would you want them to know? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your words might be exactly what another survivor needs to hear. The weeks turned into months, and Eva's silence grew heavier. She developed rituals to cope with the weight of what she was carrying. She'd take long showers, scrubbing her skin until it was red and raw, trying to wash away the feeling of his hands on her. She checked the locks on her bedroom door 3, 4, 5 times before she could fall asleep. She'd avoid any situation where she might be alone with an adult man, even teachers she'd known for years, even her own father. The worst part wasn't the memory of what happened. The worst part was the fear that it would happen again. Every time the phone rang, Eva's heart would race, terrified it was Johnson calling. Every time there was a knock at the door, she'd hide in her room until she was sure it wasn't him. And the most unbearable moments were the family gatherings, the holidays, the birthday parties, where Johnson would show up like nothing had happened. He'd walk through the door with that same easy smile, that same friendly demeanor. He'd hug Eva's mother, shake her father's hand, ruffle Tommy's hair, and then he'd look at Eva. Just a glance, just a moment of eye contact. But in that glance was a message. Remember what I told you. Don't say anything. I'm watching you. And Eva would feel her throat close up, feel the room tilt, feel like she couldn't breathe. But she'd force a smile. She'd say hello. She'd pretend everything was fine because that's what everyone expected her to do. That's what everyone needed her to do. If she fell apart, if she told the truth, the entire family would fall apart with her. She convinced herself she was protecting them by staying silent. She convinced herself it was her burden to bear alone. For weeks, Eva carried a secret that was destroying her from the inside out. She stopped caring about school. Her grades dropped. She stopped hanging out with her friends. She spent more time in her room with the door locked. She flinched when her father tried to hug her. She had nightmares that left her screaming in the middle of the night. When they asked her what was wrong, she said nothing. She said she was fine. She said she just wanted to lie down. Her mother didn't push. She just told Eva to rest and left her alone. At night, Eva would lie in bed and think about telling someone. She'd rehearse the conversation in her head. She'd imagine sitting her mother down and saying the words, "Uncle Johnson hurt me." But every time she imagined it, she'd also imagine her mother's face. The shock, the disbelief, the questions. Why didn't you tell me right away? Are you sure that's what happened? Maybe you misunderstood. And worse, she'd imagine her father's reaction. The anger, the guilt, the realization that he'd sent his daughter off with someone who hurt her. Eva couldn't bear the thought of causing that kind of pain, so she stayed silent. She told herself she was being strong. She told herself she was doing the right thing, but really she was just slowly falling apart. Her inner world became a dark, confusing place. She felt disconnected from everyone around her. She felt like she was watching her life happen to someone else. She developed anxiety that made her heart race for no reason. She had panic attacks in the middle of the school day that left her gasping for air in the bathroom. She started having thoughts that scared her, thoughts about not wanting to be here anymore, about how it would be easier if she just didn't exist. This is what trauma does when you carry it alone. It doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It infects every part of your life until you don't even recognize yourself anymore. Eva looked in the mirror one morning, 3 months after the incident, and didn't recognize the girl staring back at her. Where was the happy kid who loved books and believed in happy endings? Where was the girl who thought the world was a good place? She was gone. And in her place was someone broken, someone scared, someone who felt like she was drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. Ask yourself right now, what would you do if you noticed someone in your life changing like this? Would you ask? Would you push? Would you keep asking even if they said they were fine? Because sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes one person who refuses to accept the lie is the difference between a survivor staying silent and a survivor finding their voice. The truth came out 4 months after the incident, but not in the way you might expect. Eva didn't sit her parents down and tell them. She didn't work up the courage to speak. Instead, she broke, completely and utterly broke. It was a Tuesday evening in October. The family was sitting at the dinner table when Eva's mother mentioned that Johnson had called earlier. He wanted to know if he could take Eva and Tommy to the movies that weekend. The moment those words left her mother's mouth, something inside Eva snapped. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. She started shaking. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. Her father asked her what was wrong. Eva opened her mouth to say she was fine, to say she didn't feel well, to give another excuse. But instead, what came out was a scream. It wasn't words, it was just sound. Raw, primal, agonized sound. And then she started sobbing. Not gentle tears, gut-wrenching, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. Her parents rushed to her side, confused and terrified. They kept asking what was wrong, what happened, but Eva couldn't form words. She could only cry. Her mother held her while her father called their family doctor, thinking maybe Eva was having some kind of medical emergency. After 20 minutes, Eva's sobs finally subsided into hiccups. She was sitting on the living room floor, her mother's arms around her, her father kneeling in front of her with a glass of water. And then, in a voice so quiet they almost couldn't hear her, Eva said 5 words that would change everything. "Uncle Johnson hurt me badly." The room went silent. Eva's father asked her what she meant. Eva couldn't look at him. She stared at the floor and told them. Not all of it, not the details, but enough. She told them about the car ride, about the road, about what Johnson did, about the threats he made, about why she didn't tell them sooner. Her mother's face went pale. Her father's hands started shaking. Tommy, who had been watching from the hallway, ran to his room and slammed the door. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the entire family was frozen in that horrible moment, trying to process something too awful to comprehend. Then Eva's father stood up. He started pacing. He started crying. He said he was going to kill Johnson. Eva's mother was crying too, but she kept her arms around Eva, kept telling her it was okay, that she was safe now, that she believed her. That night, after Eva had cried herself to sleep in her mother's arms, her parents sat at the kitchen table and called the police. An officer arrived an hour later. He was kind, he was patient, he explained what would happen next. Eva would need to be interviewed by a specialist, someone trained to talk to children about these kinds of situations. There would be an investigation, there would be questions. It wouldn't be easy, but he promised them that they would do everything they could to make sure Johnson was held accountable. 2 days later, Eva sat in a small, comfortable room at the Child Advocacy Center with a forensic interviewer named Sarah. Sarah explained that the room had cameras so that the police and prosecutors could watch the interview without Eva having to tell her story multiple times. She explained that Eva could take breaks whenever she needed. She explained that there were no wrong answers. And then, slowly, gently, Sarah asked Eva to tell her what happened. This time, Eva told everything. Every detail she could remember, every word Johnson said, every threat he made. It took an hour. Eva cried through most of it. But when it was over, Sarah looked at her and said something Eva would never forget. "I believe you, and it wasn't your fault." After the interview, a detective was assigned to Eva's case. His name was Detective Martinez, and he had been working sex crimes for 15 years. He told Eva's parents that cases like this were difficult, but not impossible. They had Eva's testimony, they had the location where the incident occurred, they had a timeline. What they needed now was to build a case that would hold up in court. The investigation moved forward. Detective Martinez interviewed Eva's family members. He interviewed her friends. He interviewed her teachers. He looked for patterns, for potential victims, for anything that would strengthen the case. And then he went to talk to Johnson. Johnson denied it everything. He said Eva was lying. He said she was confused. He said she was a troubled kid going through a phase. He said he would never do something like that. He was calm. He was convincing. He was exactly what you'd expect from someone who had spent years perfecting the art of deception. But Detective Martinez had seen this before. He knew how predators operated. He knew that the most dangerous ones were the ones who seemed the most normal. So he kept digging, and eventually he found what he was looking for. Johnson had a history. Nothing that had ever led to charges, but complaints, whispered concerns from other families. A few years ago, a neighbor had mentioned feeling uncomfortable about how much time Johnson spent with their daughter. A parent at the baseball league had expressed concern about his behavior. None of it had been enough on its own, but together with Eva's testimony, it painted a picture. 6 months after Eva's disclosure, Mark Johnson was arrested and charged with multiple counts of sexual assault of a minor. He was taken into custody on a Tuesday morning at his workplace. He didn't resist, he didn't make a scene, he just went quietly, maintaining that same calm, innocent demeanor he'd always shown the world. But now, finally, people were starting to see through it. The news spread through Eva's town quickly. Some people were shocked. They couldn't believe that someone they knew, someone they'd trusted, could do something so horrible. Others weren't surprised at all. They admitted they'd always felt something was off about him, that they had suspicions but never wanted to voice them. That's the thing about predators. They hide in plain sight, and we let them because confronting the truth is uncomfortable. Eva's family was torn apart by the revelation. Her father blamed himself. He couldn't forgive himself for not seeing it, for not protecting his daughter, for sending her off with someone who hurt her. He started drinking more. He became distant. Eva's mother threw herself into being strong for Eva, but at night, Eva could hear her crying in her bedroom. Tommy, who was only 9 years old, didn't understand most of what was happening. He just knew that Uncle Johnson was a bad man and that something terrible had happened to his sister. The family went to therapy together. It helped, slowly, but the damage was done. Some things, once broken, can never be put back together exactly the way they were. The legal process was long and painful. Eva had to testify at a preliminary hearing. She had to sit in a room with Johnson just a few feet away and recount what he did to her. He stared at her the entire time, that same look in his eyes that said, "You're lying, no one will believe you." But Eva spoke anyway. Her voice shook. She cried. She had to take breaks, but she told the truth, and this time people listened. The trial itself took place almost a year after Eva's disclosure. Eva's testimony was the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. The defense attorney tried to discredit her, suggested she was confused, suggested she was making it up for attention, but the jury saw through it. They saw a young girl who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward. They saw her pain, they saw her courage, and they believed her. Mark Johnson was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison. When the sentence was read, Eva's mother sobbed with relief. Her father sat stone-faced, his hands clenched into fists. Eva felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of justice. It didn't undo what happened. It didn't take away her trauma. It didn't give her back her innocence, but it meant that he couldn't hurt anyone else. It meant that she had been heard. It meant that speaking up had mattered. For the first time since that day in the truck, Eva felt a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could heal from this. For the first time, Eva felt heard. She had stood up to the person who hurt her, and the system had backed her. That didn't erase what happened. It didn't make the nightmares stop or the anxiety go away, but it was a beginning. It was proof that her voice mattered, that her pain was real, that she deserved justice. In the weeks after the sentencing, Eva started to feel different. Not healed, not whole, but different. Lighter somehow. The secret she'd carried for so long was no longer hers alone to bear. The truth was out. The man who hurt her was behind bars. She could start to breathe again. Johnson's family was devastated. Some of them believed Eva, others didn't want to. They couldn't reconcile the man they thought they knew with the monster he actually was. Some family members cut off contact with Eva's family entirely, unable to accept the truth. Others reached out with apologies, with shame, with regret for not seeing it sooner. Eva's family dynamics would never be the same, but slowly they were learning to navigate their new reality together. Eva's story is not unique. Every 9 minutes in the United States, a child is sexually abused. In most cases, the abuser is someone the child knows and trusts, a family member, a family friend, a coach, a teacher, a neighbor. We want to believe that predators are strangers who snatch children off the street, but the statistics tell a different story. Over 90% of child sexual abuse is committed by someone the child knows. That's the uncomfortable truth we need to face. These crimes happen in our communities, in our families, in places we think are safe, and they continue to happen because we don't want to believe they can. We ignore the warning signs because acknowledging them would mean confronting something too terrible to accept. But we have to do better. We have to pay attention. We have to listen when children try to tell us something is wrong, even if they don't have the words to say it directly. We have to trust our instincts when something feels off. We have to create environments where children feel safe enough to speak up, where they know they'll be believed, where they understand that what happens to them is never their fault. There are warning signs of child sexual abuse that adults need to watch for. Sudden changes in behavior, withdrawal from activities they used to enjoy, nightmares or trouble sleeping, regression to younger behaviors, avoidance of certain people or places, inappropriate sexual knowledge or behavior for their age, self-harm or talk of suicide. These signs don't always mean abuse is happening, but they mean something is wrong, and it's our job as adults to pay attention, to ask questions, to create space for children to tell us the truth, even if they don't have the words to say it directly. We also need to understand how predators operate. They groom not just their victims, but entire families and communities. They position themselves as trustworthy, helpful, indispensable. They create situations where they can be alone with children. They test boundaries gradually. They use gifts, special attention, and threats to maintain control. They convince children that no one will believe them if they tell. And they rely on our unwillingness to believe that someone we know and like could do something so horrible. But they can, and they do, every single day. Eva wants people to know this. If you are carrying a secret like Eva did, you are not alone. It is not your fault, and you deserve to be heard. Speaking up is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it's also one of the bravest. And on the other side of that fear is the possibility of healing, of justice, of reclaiming your life from the person who tried to take it from you. To the adults watching this, believe children when they tell you something is wrong. Don't wait for them to have perfect words or perfect timing. Listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying. Pay attention to changes in behavior. Trust your instincts and create environments where children know they can come to you with anything, no matter how uncomfortable or scary it might be. Eva is 19 years old now. She's in college, studying psychology because she wants to help other survivors. She still has hard days. She still has moments where the trauma feels overwhelming, but she also has hope. She has a future, and she has a voice that she uses to help others find theirs. If you believe Eva was brave for speaking up, leave a comment in support. Share this video. Let's make sure other children know they are not alone. And if you or someone you know is suffering in silence, please speak out. Call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE. They're available 24/7, and they will believe you. You are not alone. Your voice matters, and you deserve to heal. How does this story make you feel? Could you imagine carrying a burden like Eva did at just 12 years old? If this happened to someone you loved, what would you want them to know? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, awareness is the first step to prevention. Let's protect our children together. Thank you for watching.